Hey everyone, Aaron Spears here, Young Adult Librarian at the Westlake Porter Public Library. This is our fourth and final video in our teen fall writers workshop, where in September and October we were focusing on 4 different aspects of prepping to write a novel during National Novel Writing Month, which is November. And we've been digitizing each one of these after we host them live on Zoom. We've been doing these YouTube videos, so that's what you're clicking play on right now. Number 4, we're going to do exploring settings, building worlds, and also a little bit of work with dialogue. So there should be some links below the video here if you want to take a look at the Google Doc we were using, or sign up for National Novel Writing Month, which is you hit the ground running on November 1st, and you write out your first draft throughout the month of November. You can always hit the ground running without doing any prep, and that's kind of, it's a fun experiment. I've done it a few times over the years, but with doing a little bit of prep work like we've been doing in these 4 different videos, these 4 different sessions, it really helps you keep momentum going all month long, because there's hopefully there's this whole stack of scenes that you can't wait to get to and you can't wait to write. So a little bit of preparation really helps out a lot once you get into the thick of it when you start writing in November. So anyway, that's our introduction. Let's hop in with exploring your setting. Settings can really help you create mood. The setting of your novel is where obviously the story takes place, but it also can really enhance the genre you're writing in, the mood and atmosphere, the mentality of your main character. It can do all sorts of things. So the first thing we're going to do is explore the setting by looking at moods. So this is just a brainstorm activity to kind of get the creative juices flowing. What we want to do now for maybe about a minute each is we're going to describe the setting that you would need to create the mood of creepy. So brainstorm it out. You can write it out in sentences if you want to, but the setting that would need to create the mood of creepy. And keep in mind a few things, like all of the different senses, what the smells are, what the sight is, what it sounds like in this area. So try to incorporate all of the senses as you're brainstorming creepy. All right, up next, let's swing the entire opposite way, and let's go with joyous. Describe the setting that would create the mood joyous. And number 3 here on this one is suspenseful. Describe the setting that would create the mood suspenseful, which is different than creepy. This could just be something that's a little off, a little weird, familiar, but creepy, that sort of thing. All right, now for these next couple, go back to that story that you're working on, that story idea that you have. Describe the setting that would create the mood of your choice. So pick a mood from your story. It could be the start of your story, it could be some scene in the middle, it could be something at the end, but pick one of the moods that you want to communicate in your story. All right, and let's do a second mood from your story that you want to brainstorm and explore here. All right, and let's do a third mood. This is the last one from this prompt. So what is a third mood you would like to explore? What is the setting that would create the mood you want for a part of your story? So settings can reinforce characters. The settings that we were just discussing, we were just brainstorming, were reinforcing the mood that you wanted to communicate in particular scenes in your story. But let's take a look at characters now. So for each of the following characters, try to come up with a setting that will reflect or reinforce what you imagine about them. So this is a setting that is going to reinforce the character type that you have as well. So when we can combo these up later on with the moods that we were just talking about, you're going to get a very great sense of atmosphere in your stories. But for now, we're going to try to be as detailed as possible. Don't forget colors, sounds, even smells, all of the senses like we mentioned before, and focus on where the character is. So for each of these character types, come up with a setting that reflects and reinforces what you are imagining, what you're presuming about these characters. So describe the details of a setting for a character type: a shy new kid in town. Maybe even what does that setting feel like to them, even if it's not a proper interpretation of that setting. How could a setting of like a school be very intimidating to a shy new kid? That would be very different from somebody who's like gone to school in this town their entire life. Up next, a secret scientist superhero. So describe the details of a setting for that particular type of character. Next character, we've got describe the details of a setting for a character that is a criminal in a standoff with the police. Now, in this particular character type, or this character scenario, there's actually two characters here. You could do it from the point of view of the criminal, or you can do it from the point of view of the police. So you have a standoff situation involving a criminal and the police. So it'd be the same setting, but that setting is going to feel very different to a criminal and or a police officer. So now let's do this from your perspective, again, going into your story idea. So pick a character from your story and describe the details of a setting for that particular character type. When I'm brainstorming, I like to think about a private space that the character's in, maybe like their room, their house, their apartment, whatever, but a private, personal space for one of the characters in your novel. All right, this one is going to be a bit more rapid fire. We're only going to do about maybe 20, 30 seconds each on this. One of the ways that you can build out your world is to go to different questions. So in the Google Doc that is linked below this video, it's actually 20 questions to build a world, but I scaled it down and pulled out a few of them here that we can kind of play around with and brainstorm. So one of the most important things when you're writing is grounding your story in a believable setting. And it doesn't just include fantasy, and a lot of these questions do skew a little bit more towards the fantasy genre, but you can even answer fantasy genre question prompts if your story is being set in the real world, because it makes you kind of rethink about what we have going on right here in the real world around us. So it works for any genre. It's a world building exercise that can help you figure out how your character or characters fit into the bigger picture and learn what their motivations are and their place within this larger world. So this is also, I should say, one of those brainstorming exercises where this is going to help you with a lot of world building, and it's going to give you a lot more details about the world at large that your characters are in. But this really may end up just becoming background information or information that you know of as the author, even if you don't fully use it in your particular story. Like, you don't necessarily maybe want to have a whole chapter where it's just describing the whole world that these characters are in. You want to get your own handle on the world that your characters are living and functioning in, but you also want to slowly be revealing bits of this information to build the world to your audience as well. So let's jump in with now. So picture the world that your characters are living in, and we're going to jump into a few rapid fire questions. Just go with your gut and write down the first few things that you think of when these questions are asked of the world that your story is set in. So let's start off with some basics. How long has your world existed? What holidays does your world celebrate? And again, some of these may be as simple as like, it's the real world. They celebrate this holiday, this holiday, this holiday. But if not, think about it. What kind of holidays would you celebrate in the world of your story? What are the seasons of your world, or are there seasons in the world that your characters are living in? What is the geography and climate like of the world that your characters live in? And it could be focusing on the area your characters maybe start off in, but they travel over different geographical forms. Are there mountains? Are there valleys? Is it all flat land? Is it a lot of water? What is the class or social structure of your world? Where in that structure does your protagonist fall? What is the structure of your world's government? Does it have a government? What does your world smell like? What is considered a curse in your world? And what is considered sacred? Is there any magic in your world? And if so, what kind? Because even in realistic fiction or contemporary fiction, there are magicians, there are illusionists out there. So that is a type of magic that exists. So even if it is a contemporary set novel, what kind of magic is it? What are some main dishes, some foods that people eat in your world? All right, another thing we want to look at now is to go into your particular world. We went through a few things when we were exploring the setting, how settings can create moods, but then also how characters can, and their settings can reinforce character types. And then we did 10 questions to build a bigger world. So we've got a good bit of brainstorming about setting, moods, characters, and the world itself. So let's jump into your story. Now, as you go through your story, there are, as we mentioned in a previous video, there are certain elements that you're going to have in your story structure. You're going to have your inciting incident. You're going to have your, you're going to have your setup. You're going to have your inciting incident, your rising action, your climax, your falling action, and your resolution. Now, that is, those are your main 7 story beats, as we called them in a previous video. So let's look at those story beats and write out a list or details that describe a setting that will help you create the right mood for each one of those scenes. So in this case, we're going to spend a minute or so here on the setup. What are the details and the setting that are going to take place for the setup of your story? When you're introducing your character and you're introducing your protagonist to the reader, your character's world, what is the setting going to be for that setup? All right, the next spot that we're going to take a look at, what is the setting for your inciting incident? This is the part of the story where the plot really kicks in, where your hero, your protagonist, accepts the call to action. They are on a journey, they're about to embark on a journey, whatever that's going to be, that takes you through the rest of the story. What is it, the location? What is the setting and the mood for that inciting incident? Now, the rising action section of your book is the largest chunk of your book or the largest chunk of your story. So there's going to be a lot of different settings, presumably, and different moods. So this one, you may want to brainstorm a little bit longer than a minute or so, but what are a few of the settings that your main character is going to be traveling through or experiencing? What are the up and down moods that are going to happen throughout the rising action? This is going to lead them all directly into the climax. So, like I said, a good chunk of your story, but try to list out as best you can a few of the settings and moods you're going to need to tell the main bulk of your story. All right, the climax. This is the big deal. This is the final confrontation. This is the final bit of drama that your character and characters are going to experience. What is the setting for this big climax, the big payoff at the peak of your story? So the following action is what happens immediately after the climax. So your climax is going to have a specific setting and a specific mood. The following action is the ramifications of that climax. If it's good versus evil, your good guy versus bad guy, or your protagonist versus your antagonist, what is the immediate fallout from that? Is it in the same location? What is the mood? What's going on here? And the last one on this is resolution. The resolution to your story is traditionally the hero, the protagonist, the lead character or characters, either return back to their home and they're changed, or they don't have a home to return to. They're settling in, what is life going to be like at the end of your story as you're resolving all of those narrative threads you've been playing with characters and plot. All right, this one is going to be all about dialogue. This is a little tricky to do sometimes because dialogue in itself is hard to sort of nail down. You don't want to just have transcribed dialogue like from everyday life, because that doesn't really have the flavor and the necessary elements of drama that you want when you're writing a story. So dialogue separate from real life, dialogue in a novel should do one or all, if you can swing it that way, of the following. It should move the story forward. It should reveal things about the characters, and it should increase the tension of your story. What do we mean by moving the story forward? Well, characters can be talking about what they're up to, what they're planning on, what they're in the middle of working towards, so that would move the story forward. Revealing things about the characters could be as simple as a catchphrase or a certain thing that character or a certain style of dialogue that your characters say when they talk. So this is the part where you can give each individual character what they would call a unique voice. So whether or not it's a catchphrase, or if you just have a character that says y'all all the time instead of you all or everyone, there's ways that you can make each unique character voice sound different from the other characters, because they're completely different characters. This can also increase the tension, and what we mean by that is the dialogue could be between two characters and one character doesn't want to reveal any information. They're just playing it quiet, or they're trying to mislead the other character. This is going to increase the tension within the reader, because the reader knows all of what the characters are doing, versus this one exchange of dialogue between two characters where one is trying to manipulate the other. The character may not know they're being manipulated, but the audience, us reading that story, is going to know what's going on, and that increases the tension. So in this exercise, this is actually one from a creative writing class I had back in college that I really liked. It's a dialogue-only writing prompt. So write a dialogue-only scene, so don't describe anything, it's only through dialogue. A dialogue-only scene between two inanimate objects that are normally used or found together. A couple examples we have here, and feel free to use any of these you want. A pen and paper, laptop and a desktop, TV show and a reality TV show, bacteria and antibiotics, these sort of things. So they're found together, but they don't necessarily always end up actually working together. So let's explore a dialogue-only scene between two inanimate objects for a moment or two here. So with this example, I actually wrote something out between laptop and desktop, and it got pretty antagonistic right away, because you have a laptop that can go anywhere, and you have a desktop that stays put and is only worked on when someone is at their home or their apartment. So the laptop-desktop conversation ended up being a bit of jealousy between the two, because the laptop is always with the owner and always being used, and the desktop even some days doesn't even get turned on at all. So it's a bit of anthropomorphization, because you're applying human qualities to inanimate objects, but then that also shows you what you can get between these two dynamics, like pen and paper. One is actually being written on and one is doing the writing. So there's a power dynamic there as well too. So that gets you, especially doing it dialogue only, that is meant to get your brain in the mindset of communicating as much information as you can or as needed through just the dialogue, and not having any expository writing in there at all. So this next one is called Cut It Out. Unless you're including them to reveal a character as a brainiac or a blowhard, you want to try to omit needless words in your dialogue. So this idea on the next slide here is going to give you 3 lines of dialogue that are a little bit cumbersome. I think they're a little bit clunky on purpose. And see how much you can cut away out of this dialogue, but the key is you still want to communicate the general point here. So let's take a look at that and see what we mean here. What do you want to do this Sunday? I thought we could go to the amusement park. Perfectly fine sentence, expressing some plans, and it's also some familiarity, because it's clearly two people that are friends trying to make plans. These are not strangers. I was thinking about renting a rowboat, Vladimir said, on one of the lakes. Oh, Vladimir, that sounds wonderful. I've never gone rowing before. So again, there's some familiarity there. There's some friendly planning, but it's also not really the way friends could talk. It all makes sense, but so let's take a minute here or so and try to cut this down to as little as possible, but again, still trying to still retain the basic idea of what's going on here. It's two people making plans. All right, hopefully that got you thinking about dialogue in some specific ways and to get you prepped for when you will be doing your work during National Novel Writing Month, which is November. Before we close out this video, I wanted to throw out a couple of tips that I grabbed online from different authors, but then also the NaNoWriMo website itself that I think are pretty handy if you're serious about doing this National Novel Writing Month, or if you're just serious about trying to get some writing done some days. Here are a few tips that I find to be pretty helpful. Designate a time to write each day. Routines are very much your friend when you're on this sort of a creative endeavor, whether it's painting, whether it's dancing, whether it's writing, whatever it is. You want to have specific time each day and get into a routine of just practicing. Writing, you need to practice writing the same way you need to practice an instrument if you're a musician. And having that routine also helps you because those days when you just don't feel like, I try to write before going to bed at night. Some days you're just tired, you don't want to, but at the same time, that's my routine. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to do 15 minutes of journaling. And you know what? I ended up going some places that I didn't think my mind was going to go because my routine is my friend and it got me to write even when I wasn't feeling it right away. Also, I find it really helpful to eat something healthy before you sit down to write. I'm as guilty as anybody of just like grabbing some delicious Taco Bell or something like that. But if you are putting junk food in your body, there's a good chance you're going to start feeling terrible because the effects of the junk food on the body as you're writing, and you don't want that. You want something good, healthy before you sit down to start writing. You want to give your body and your mind energy, but good, healthy energy when you're trying to be creative. Deep clean and organize your writing space before you begin. I think this came from some Stephen King writing tips I was reading, but it's the idea of if everything's kind of messy, you'll start fidgeting, you'll start needing to clean up. No. This is time for writing, not for cleaning. So do a good deep clean and get yourself organized in your writing space before you begin. That way there's no distractions of, I should do this. I should tidy that up. I should dust this, or I should sharpen all these pencils. You're just able to focus on the writing. If you are living in a space that's not just yours, if you're sharing a room or you're in an apartment or, you're in your parents' house or apartment, make and utilize a do not disturb sign. You're old enough to be on your own for, 20 minutes to an hour or whatever or longer. Put up that do not disturb sign. Let them know, hey, I'm working on something. Please do not disturb. I'm trying to concentrate. I've also found it really helpful over the years doing NaNoWriMo projects to ask someone to be your accountability buddy, which is at this stage of technology and life in 2021, could just be texting. Pick a friend or two and text each other, make sure you're getting some writing done each day, make sure you're working on the projects that you've decided you want to work on, and have some accountability there. So, they can kind of, if you're having a sluggish day and you're not feeling like it, and you get that text saying like, hey, how much writing did you get done today? I got 5 pages in. You're like, ooh, shoot. Little friendly competition kicks in and you're like, all right, I do have to get some done today. I need to sit down and I need to focus. So having somebody that's an accountability buddy, hopefully working both ways, you're helping them, they're helping you, and keeping everybody encouraged throughout the month is really, really handy. That is it. That is the end of part 4. Thank you very much for watching, for doing some writing along with us here, and I hope it gets you prepped and ready and you have a successful National Novel Writing Month. Happy writing, everybody.